The night sky above Outpost Theta was filled with quiet stars, each one reflected on the smooth metal walls of the human barracks. Commander Eli Grant sat alone in his small room, staring at the strange invitation glowing on his tablet. The message came from the Vareen, a proud alien species known for their traditions and strict honor codes. It said only one thing: "You are chosen to join the initiation." At first, Eli thought it was a mistake. He was a human mechanic, not a diplomat. The Vareen were warriors, tall and proud, with blue-silver skin and golden eyes. They didn't invite humans to their sacred ceremonies. But the message had the High Council's seal. It wasn't a joke. His friend Corporal Mason laughed when Eli showed him. "An alien initiation? Probably just some formal handshake thing, man. You'll go, smile, bow, and get a fancy medal." Eli smiled weakly, but something about it didn't feel simple. The Vareen were serious about rituals. He had seen one of them banished for laughing during a ceremony. Still, he told himself it couldn't be that big of a deal. He was just a guest, right? The next morning, a Vareen escort ship came for him. Inside the sleek, crystalline ship, everything shimmered with soft blue light. The alien pilot, a silent woman with gold markings across her face, only said one thing: "Do not refuse what is offered." Those words stayed in his head. When they landed on the Vareen moon, the air felt heavy and strange. The ground was covered in silver sand that glowed faintly under the twin suns. Thousands of Vareen stood in rows, wearing long robes and holding glowing staffs. The sound of deep drums echoed through the valley. Eli's heart pounded. A tall figure stepped forward, High Priest Takora, known for his cold voice and sharp eyes. "Human Eli Grant," he said in perfect English. "You have repaired our ships, saved our pilots, and earned the right to stand among us. Today you will complete the initiation." Eli bowed slightly. "Thank you, High Priest." "I'm honored," the crowd hummed in approval. Then the priest lifted his staff. A door of light opened behind him. "You must enter the Chamber of Unity," he said, "and accept what waits inside. Once you step through, there is no turning back." Eli hesitated. His hands trembled slightly. "Is this symbolic?" he asked quietly. The priest only smiled. "Everything is symbolic, human." Eli took a deep breath and walked through the glowing doorway. The moment he stepped in, the air changed. It felt warmer, softer, almost alive. The chamber was circular, filled with mist and strange lights. In the center stood a single figure, a young alien woman. She was unlike any Vareen he had seen. Her skin glowed faintly blue, her hair silver like moonlight, and her eyes bright amber. She wore ceremonial bands on her wrists and a soft veil that covered part of her face. When she looked up, their eyes met, and the room seemed to breathe. "I am Liara," she said gently. Her voice was musical, calm, and curious. "You came for the initiation?" Eli nodded, unsure. "Yes, I was told to come here." "I didn't know someone would be waiting." She tilted her head, studying him. "You didn't?" He shook his head. "No, I thought it was a kind of formality, a ceremony to honor cooperation." Liara's expression softened, almost amused. "Formality?" she whispered. "For us, the initiation is sacred. It joins two souls from different worlds. Your presence here means you have accepted." Eli froze. "Accepted what?" She stepped closer. The scent of silver dust filled the air. "Me," she said softly, "as your bondmate." "Your wife." The world spun around him. He stepped back. "Wait, what?" "I didn't agree to," but before he could finish, the chamber walls pulsed with light. A deep hum surrounded them. A circle of energy rose from the floor, wrapping around them both. Liara placed her hand on his chest and her voice echoed with power. Two paths now one, two hearts now bound. Eli's vision blurred. The hum turned into a deep sound that filled his bones. He tried to move, but the light held him still. When the glow faded, he stood in silence. The veil had vanished from Liara's face. She was beautiful, radiant, otherworldly, but her eyes now carried a faint human warmth. Outside, the drums roared louder. The priest's voice echoed through the walls. "The bond is sealed. The human is now joined to the Vareen bloodline." Eli's mouth went dry. "Joined?" Liara smiled shyly, as if sensing his shock. "It cannot be undone," she said. "You are mine now, and I am yours." He stared at her, heart racing. What had he just agreed to? Outside, the celebration began. Inside, Eli stood frozen. realizing too late that what he thought was just a formal alien tradition had just changed his entire life. And somewhere deep in the crowd, unseen eyes watched with quiet interest. Eyes that didn't celebrate, but plotted. The initiation was only the beginning. Eli woke up to the soft hum of alien music. The ceiling above him shimmered like liquid glass, shifting with colors he couldn't name. For a moment, he thought he was still dreaming. Then he turned his head and saw Liara sitting beside him. She was watching him with gentle curiosity, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the morning light. A strange silver mark glimmered on her collarbone, and when Eli looked down, he saw the same mark faintly pulsing on his wrist. "What is this?" he asked quietly, rubbing it. Liara smiled softly. "The bond seal," she said. "It links us through the Vareen heart network. You will feel what I feel." "Sometimes," Eli blinked. "Feel what you feel." She nodded. "Emotions. Pain. Warmth. It is the essence of our union." He sat up, still trying to understand. His voice came out uneasy. "So I'm married to you now? Just like that?" Liara tilted her head, a faint blush spreading over her glowing skin. "Yes," she said simply. To refuse would have insulted the High Council. The initiation chooses. It is not asked. Eli rubbed his face, trying to calm the storm in his mind. He had come here thinking it was just a formality, a thank you ceremony for repairing alien ships. Instead, he had somehow married a Vareen woman, one who didn't seem surprised at all. He looked around the chamber. The walls were covered in carvings that moved like living light. "Where are we?" Liara stood and offered him a hand. "In the sanctuary of bonds," she said. "It is where new unions begin. The next phase starts soon." "The next phase?" he repeated, nervous. "There's more?" Before she could answer, the chamber door opened. A group of Vareen attendants entered, tall, silver-skinned, their movements slow and precise. One of them handed Eli a new set of robes, woven from a metallic fabric that shimmered like starlight. "You will wear this," Liara said, her tone calm but firm. "The council awaits." He followed her through a long corridor lit by floating crystals. Every few steps he caught strange glances from passing aliens. Some smiled politely. Others whispered behind their hands. He could feel curiosity in their stares. And something else. Disapproval. When they entered the grand hall, the high priest stood waiting with several elders. The air smelled faintly of burning herbs. The drums had stopped. All was silent. "Human Eli Grant," the priest said, his tone cold and formal. "You have been bound by the ritual of unity. Your heart now beats alongside the Vareen. From this day your loyalty belongs not to Earth, but to your bondmate, Liara, and to the Vareen homeworld." Eli's stomach twisted. "Loyalty?" he repeated. "I'm a soldier. I serve the Alliance. The Alliance does not rule the bond," the priest interrupted sharply. "Your oath transcends politics." Liara's hand brushed his wrist gently. Through the strange link, he felt her calmness flow into him. Her emotions were warm, steady like a soft current. She was trying to help him. After the ceremony, they returned to a private chamber with high glass walls overlooking the glowing silver desert. Eli stood by the window silent for a long time. Liara finally spoke. "You're troubled." He turned to her, sighing. "Wouldn't you be? I came here thinking this was a ceremony. I didn't expect this." Her expression softened. "You think I expected it?" she said quietly. "The bond chooses for us too, Eli. When I saw you step into the chamber, I didn't know who you were. But the bond's light surrounded you. It means our paths were meant to cross." He studied her face, calm, kind, almost sad. "Do you believe that?" he asked. Liara nodded. "I must." A long silence filled the room. Outside, the twin suns began to set, painting the silver dunes in shades of violet and blue. For a brief moment, Eli forgot where he was. The view was beautiful, unreal. Then he felt something strange, a pulse in his wrist. It wasn't his heartbeat, it was hers. Through the bond, he sensed a flicker of pain. Her breathing changed. Her fingers tightened slightly. "What's wrong?" he asked, stepping closer. Liara's smile faltered. "Nothing, it is the bond settling. It burns at first." "Burns?" he repeated, alarmed. Before she could answer, a sudden knock came at the door. A male Vareen entered, tall, his eyes sharp like steel. "Liara," he said coldly, ignoring Eli. "The Council of Elders has summoned you. Alone." She bowed slightly. "Of course," she turned to Eli. "Stay here. Do not follow." When she left, Eli stood frozen. The door sealed behind her with a soft hiss. The room fell silent again. He stared at his glowing wrist, the mark pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Then faintly through the strange connection, he heard something. A whisper, Liara's voice, faint, distant, filled with fear. "Eli, don't trust them." The sound vanished as quickly as it came. The light on his wrist dimmed. Eli's eyes widened. He stepped closer to the door, but it wouldn't open. Something wasn't right. The ceremony, the bond, the smiles, all of it hid something darker. And now the only person who could tell him the truth was being taken away by her own kind. The silence in the chamber stretched endlessly after Liara left. Eli stood by the sealed door, staring at the faint glow of his bond mark. It pulsed slowly, as if echoing her heartbeat somewhere far away. He tried to steady his breathing, but a cold unease crawled up his spine. Her last words echoed in his mind. "Don't trust them." Those 4 words changed everything. He began pacing, scanning every inch of the room. The walls were smooth and glowing, but something about them felt alive, as if they were watching him. On the far side, he found a faint seam in the wall, an access panel maybe. He pressed against it and it slid open with a quiet hiss. Inside was a small maintenance interface with alien symbols. He couldn't read Vareen text, but as a mechanic, he recognized control systems anywhere. With a few careful touches, he managed to bring up a holographic map of the complex. It showed several chambers connected through tunnels, one of them labeled in bright red glyphs. Liara's signal, he guessed, was blinking there. Then something else appeared beside her signal. Another mark. Dark. Pulsing slowly like a predator waiting. Eli clenched his jaw. "I'm not just sitting here," he muttered. He grabbed his wristband communicator, still synced to the human fleet network. Static answered him. No connection. Either blocked or jammed. He swore under his breath and looked back at the glowing panel. He had no weapons, no armor, no translator, just his instincts. Still, instincts had kept him alive before. Eli pressed a few more commands and found a passage route marked as service corridor. He smiled faintly. "Every system needs maintenance," he whispered. "Let's see if yours does too." He pried the panel open further and crawled inside. The tunnel was narrow, the walls pulsing faint blue with energy veins. He moved carefully, feeling the vibrations under his palms. The deeper he went, the louder the hum became. After several minutes, he stopped at a small grate. Peering through, he saw a large chamber filled with Vareen officials. In the center stood Liara, her hands bound by glowing cuffs. Eli's chest tightened. The High Priest Takora was there, his voice calm and sharp. "The human believes the bond is sacred," he said to the council. "He does not know the real purpose. The experiment must continue." Liara lifted her head, anger in her golden eyes. "You are breaking the old code. The bond was never meant for control." The priest's tone darkened. "Control? No. Survival. The human's DNA is adaptable. His bond to you stabilizes the mutation we need." Eli's mind froze. Mutation? Experiment? He pressed closer, heart pounding. Liara struggled against her cuffs. "You used him without consent. You told me it was a union of choice." The priest stepped forward, his silver robe brushing the floor. "You are part of this choice, Liara. The bond needs 2 hearts. You will not break it." Liara glared at him, breathing hard. "You underestimate humans," she said. "He will not let you use him." The priest gave a cold smile. "He won't even know." Eli had heard enough. He pulled the grate open and dropped silently to the floor. The sound echoed faintly and all heads turned. The priest's eyes widened slightly. "Ah, the human joins us." Eli straightened, his voice low and steady. "You're experimenting on me? On us?" The priest folded his hands. "Your biology is ununique. The Vareen are dying. Our lifeblood weakens with each generation. The unity bond is our only chance to merge our strength with another species. Liara shook her head desperately. Eli, don't listen. They'll twist your mind through the bond. Eli felt the mark on his wrist burn suddenly like fire crawling under his skin. He gasped, falling to one knee. The priest raised his staff. See? The bond obeys our will. Liara screamed, breaking free with sudden force. Her cuffs shattered in a burst of blue light. She rushed to Eli, grabbing his face between her hands. Look at me. Breathe. Her touch sent a wave of warmth through him. The burning eased. Their link pulsed, bright, alive, synchronized. Eli's vision cleared. He could see the fear in her eyes, and something else. Trust. He stood again, slowly. You should have told me the truth, he said to the priest. You didn't need control, you needed help. The priest's expression hardened. You cannot understand our ways. Eli smiled coldly. Try me. Without warning, he slammed his hand on a nearby console. Sparks burst. The lights flickered. Alarms began to sound. The chamber filled with confusion as energy arcs danced across the ceiling. Liara grabbed his arm. This way! They ran through a side corridor, the sound of shouts echoing behind them. The walls flashed red, signaling lockdown. Doors began sealing one by one. They barely slipped through the last one before it closed. Now they were in another passage, dark, narrow, with strange glowing roots spreading along the floor. Eli leaned against the wall, breathing hard. You knew? Liara nodded weakly. They told me you were chosen to restore balance. I didn't know they meant to use you. He touched her shoulder gently. We'll figure it out. But first, we get out of here. Liara's eyes met his, glowing softly, even in the dark. You still trust me? She whispered. He hesitated, then nodded. I don't know what this bond really is, he said quietly, but I can feel what's in your heart. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the alien structure surrounded them. Then, from somewhere behind them, the metallic voice of the high priest echoed through the halls. You cannot run, human. The bond links you to her. Wherever she goes, we will find you. Liara's grip tightened on his hand. Eli looked down the endless corridor, his eyes narrowing. Then they better be ready, he said, because I'm done being their experiment. And together they disappeared into the shadows of the alien moon, hunted, bonded, and now part of a truth much larger than either of them had imagined. The corridors of the Vareen moon base glowed red as alarms screamed across the structure. Eli and Liara ran through the narrow tunnels, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the metal walls. Behind them, heavy boots and mechanical drones followed like hounds hunting prey. Left! Liara shouted, her silver hair flying as she turned sharply into a side passage. Eli followed, nearly slipping on the smooth floor. He could still feel the faint heat of the bond mark burning on his wrist, reacting to her fear. Every time she panicked, his pulse raced with hers. They're tracking us through the bond, Eli said, breathing hard. We can't just keep running. Liara nodded, her golden eyes sharp with thought. There's one place they can't reach us, she said quickly. The outer sanctum. The energy storms there disrupt all signals, even the bond link. Eli frowned. You mean that storm I saw from orbit? The one ripping apart the surface? She gave a grim nod. Yes, it's the only way. They reached a sealed airlock door. Liara placed her palm against the scanner, whispering ancient Vareen words. The lock resisted for a moment, then released with a hiss. The door slid open to reveal a narrow docking bay lined with small scout ships. Eli stopped, his breath catching. You can fly one of those? Liara gave him a look that almost made her smile return. Can you fix one of those? He grinned faintly. Fair point. Together they climbed into a small craft, its controls glowing dim blue. The engines coughed weakly, damaged from neglect. Eli slid into the co-pilot's seat, his hands moving instinctively over the unfamiliar layout. I can't read this language, but I can guess what's broken. Liara activated the systems, and a low hum filled the cabin. The roof of the docking, Bay began to open, revealing the swirling silver sky of the alien moon. Bolts of plasma streaked across the clouds like living lightning. "Hold on," she said, gripping the controls. The ship lifted shakily, then burst upward into the storm. Outside, chaos reigned. Winds howled like beasts, tearing at the hull. Static crackled over their bond, mixing pain and adrenaline. Eli held onto the dashboard, watching the sensors flicker. "We'll be fried if we stay in this storm too long," Liara shouted over the noise. "That's the point. The interference. Hides us!" The ship twisted through blinding flashes of light, dodging debris. Eli's stomach churned, but he forced his focus on the radar. "Wait, there's something following us. 3 signatures." Liara glanced at the display. "Council drones." The small hunter crafts emerged from the clouds, sleek and deadly, firing blue plasma bolts that streaked past their hull. Eli grabbed a lever near the seat, guessing its purpose. The ship's thrusters roared, jerking them forward. "You just overcharged the engines," Liara yelled, gripping the controls tighter. "Yeah," Eli said with a grin. "But we're still alive." They dove through a canyon of glowing rock, lightning flashing all around them. One of the drones miscalculated the curve and exploded against the cliffside. The shockwave rattled their ship, and a warning light flared red. "Power core unstable," Liara said, her voice steady but strained. "We need to land soon." "Where?" She pointed ahead. Through the storm's haze, a faint glow pulsed on the horizon, a cave lit by strange bioluminescent crystals. "There," she said. "That's the edge of the outer sanctum." They pushed the ship hard, engines screaming. Another drone fired, hitting their left wing. The craft spun, alarms blaring. Eli grabbed the manual stabilizer. "Hang on." They hit the ground hard, skidding across the rocky terrain until the ship slammed into the cave's entrance. Sparks flew, and then silence. Eli coughed, unbuckling his harness. "We're alive." Liara's soft laugh was the only answer. "Barely." Outside, the storm roared like a living creature, shielding them from pursuit. The drones hovered for a moment, then retreated, unable to track them through the electromagnetic field. Eli stepped out onto the rocky ground, looking around the cave. The walls shimmered with veins of glowing crystal, and faint heat radiated from the floor. "What is this place?" Liara joined him, touching the crystals with reverence. "It's sacred ground," she said quietly. "Long ago, my ancestors used this place to hide from the warlords of old. The energy here breaks all control signals. Even the bond becomes weak here." Eli glanced at his wrist. The mark was dimmer now, pulsing slowly instead of burning. "You mean they can't hear us anymore?" She nodded. "For now." He exhaled deeply and sat on a rock. "Then we need to figure out what they're really doing. That priest talked about mutation, about using me for something." "What did he mean?" Liara hesitated. "Our people are dying," she said softly. "The Vareen bloodline is losing its energy. They believe merging our life essence with human DNA could restore it. The bond ceremony was supposed to test compatibility, but they never told me they'd force it." Eli looked at her, realizing the weight in her voice. "So you didn't want this either?" She met his gaze. "I didn't want to deceive you. I only wanted peace between our worlds." He nodded slowly. "Then we both got trapped in their plan." Liara sank beside him, exhaustion in her eyes. "There's more," she whispered. "The High Priest isn't just seeking survival. He wants power. If the hybrid bond works, he can control both species through one will." Eli clenched his fists. "Over my dead body," she smiled faintly. "That's the spirit humans are known for." They sat in silence for a moment, the storm flashing outside like distant war drums. Then Liara looked up suddenly, her eyes wide. "Eli, do you feel that?" The mark on his wrist began to glow again, stronger than before. "They found a way to break through the storm," she whispered, fear trembling in her voice. Eli stood, his eyes narrowing. "Then we stop running," he said. "If they want to fight, this time they'll get one." The cave walls trembled as a beam of blue light cut through the entrance. Shadows moved beyond the glow. The hunt wasn't over. It was just beginning. The blue beam slicing through the cave entrance looked like lightning frozen in midair. The hum it carried made Eli's bones vibrate. He grabbed Liara's arm and pulled her behind a jagged crystal outcrop as sparks rained across the floor. "Stay low," he whispered. But she was already scanning the walls, her golden eyes glowing faintly. They shouldn't be able to track us in this storm, she muttered, confusion in her voice. Then they changed the rules, Eli said. The light at the entrance widened, and 3 figures stepped through. Not drones this time, but armored Vareen guards, their armor etched with moving symbols. The lead one raised his staff, and it emitted a low-frequency pulse that made the cave crystals flicker. Eli's wrist burned where the bond mark was. They're using your energy signature, Liara said, realizing it. The bond is a bridge, they're following it. Eli gritted his teeth. Then it's time to burn that bridge. He scanned the wreckage of their ship nearby. A section of the power core was still intact, sparking with unstable plasma. If I can overload that, he whispered, it'll blow the entrance shut, trap them on the other side. Liara's eyes widened. You'll be caught in it too. He gave a tight smile. Only if I'm slow. Before she could stop him, he darted toward the damaged ship. The guards spotted the movement and raised their weapons. Bolts of blue energy ripped through the air, striking the floor around him. Eli dove behind the hull, sliding across the dust. His heart pounded, but his hands moved fast, guided by instinct and training. He tore off a panel, exposing the glowing core within, a swirling sphere of light and heat. Using a loose wire and a broken spanner, he twisted 2 conductors together until the hum grew louder. The metal began to melt under his touch. Liara called out, Eli, they're closing in. He looked up. 2 guards had broken formation and were advancing. Their steps were silent, but their shadows stretched long across the glowing cave. Liara stepped forward, her hands glowing with a faint blue aura. She whispered a word in Vareen, and the crystals around the guards began to pulse violently. With a burst of energy, sharp crystal spikes shot from the walls, striking the ground between the guards and forcing them back. Eli shouted, Now! And slammed his spanner against the power core. The light flared blinding white. The explosion was deafening. Heat rolled through the cave as a shockwave slammed into them both. Dust and smoke filled the air. When the noise faded, the entrance was gone, sealed under tons of collapsed rock. Eli lay on the ground, gasping for breath. His ears rang and his vision spun. Liara crawled toward him, her face pale but alive. You did it, she whispered. He managed a weak grin. Guess I still have a few tricks. But before they could rest, the ground beneath them shuddered again. The explosion had destabilized the crystal field. Hairline cracks glowed across the cave floor, spreading fast. We need to move, Liara said, helping him to his feet. The energy veins are rupturing. They stumbled deeper into the cave system, following a faint tunnel lit by flickering blue veins. The air grew warmer, thicker. Soon the sound of flowing energy surrounded them, like a heartbeat beneath the earth. Eli glanced at her. Where are we going? To the core nexus, she said.
It's ancient.
It channels all energy across this moon. If we can reach it, we might break the bond connection completely. He frowned. You can do that? She hesitated. Maybe, but it will hurt. They moved in silence for several minutes until the tunnel opened into a massive cavern. In the center stood a huge floating crystal, suspended by unseen forces glowing with pure white light. Streams of energy flowed from it like rivers, spreading into the rock around them. Liara stepped forward slowly, her expression full of awe and fear. This is it, she whispered. The heart of the Vareen world. Eli could feel the power in the air. His skin prickled and his bond mark began to pulse in rhythm with the light. He could feel Liara's heartbeat again, faster this time. How do we stop them from using this bond to find us? He asked. Liara placed her hands on the crystal's surface. By giving the energy back, she said softly. The bond takes from the core. If I return it, it may sever the link. But once done, it can't be undone. We'll never sense each other again. Eli stared at her, stunned. You mean, the bond will die? She nodded slowly. Yes, it's the only way to keep you safe. He stepped closer. And what about you? Her lips trembled. If I'm lucky, I'll survive the shock. He shook his head. No, there has to be another way. She smiled sadly. Eli, humans fight for what they love. Vareen sacrifice for what they protect. Let me do this, he grabbed her hand. You're both now. You don't have to choose. But before she could answer, a low rumble filled the chamber. The high priest's voice echoed through the air, cold and powerful. You cannot run from destiny, human. The core itself answers to us. Energy surged across the walls. A spectral projection of the priest appeared, his eyes burning gold. The bond cannot be broken without consequence. You break it, you die. Liara's grip tightened around Eli's hand. Then we die free. The core began to glow brighter, flooding the room with light. Energy tendrils wrapped around them both, lifting them off the ground. The air hummed with power, and Eli could feel the bond pulsing between their hearts like a living flame. He shouted over the roar, "Liara! Don't—" She looked at him one last time, tears glowing in her golden eyes. "For both our worlds, Eli." And then with a whisper, she pressed her palms fully against the core. The light exploded outward. A soundless flash filled the cave, and everything vanished in white. Outside, the storm over the Vareen moon shifted for the first time in centuries. The world was silent. No sound, no breath, no light, only a blinding whiteness that stretched forever. Eli floated in the void, weightless, feeling as though his soul had been torn from his body. He tried to move, but his limbs felt like mist. Then came the voice, soft, fading, familiar. "Eli?" He turned toward it. Through the haze, a faint figure appeared, Liara. Her form flickered like a dying flame. Her silver hair drifted around her face, and her eyes glowed dim gold. "Where are we?" he whispered. "In between," she said gently. "The core tried to take the energy back, but it couldn't. The bond held us here." He looked down at his wrist. The mark was still there, but instead of glowing blue, it shimmered weakly white. "You said breaking the bond would kill us." Liara smiled faintly. "It tried to, but you wouldn't let go." He reached toward her, his hand trembling. "Then let's go back, together." She shook her head. "It's not that simple. The core is collapsing. The storm above is feeding on its energy. If we don't stabilize it, this moon will die, and maybe take your fleet with it." Eli stared at her, stunned. "You can fix that?" Her expression darkened. "Yes, but it requires life energy. A sacrifice. The core must absorb a living essence to balance the bond's rupture." Realization hit him. "You mean one of us?" Liara nodded slowly. He stepped closer. "Then I'll do it." She looked up sharply. "No, you're human. Your life force burns too bright. It would destroy the core." "I'm Vareen. I can endure it." He grabbed her shoulders. "You endured enough already. They used you, lied to you, forced this bond. I'm not letting you die to fix their mistake." Her eyes softened. "And I'm not letting you die for mine." The white void trembled around them. Cracks of blue light formed in the air, opening glimpses of the real world beyond. The collapsing cave, the raging storm, and the High Priest's forces searching through the ruins. Time was running out. Liara placed her hand on his chest, her touch light as air. "You gave me something no Vareen ever understood, choice. Let me make mine." Eli shook his head, his throat tight. "You think I'll just watch you fade?" Her golden eyes glistened. "You won't have to watch. You'll wake up. You'll live. And when you look at the stars, I'll be there." The cracks widened. The pull of reality grew stronger, dragging them apart. Eli shouted, "Liara, don't do this." She smiled softly, tears drifting upward like sparks. "Remember, Eli, the bond never dies. It only changes." And then she pushed him away. The light swallowed her completely. Eli fell backward, gasping as the world snapped into chaos. He woke up on the rocky floor of the cave. The air was thick with dust and the stench of ozone. His ears rang, his body ached, and the storm outside roared louder than ever. He pushed himself up, coughing. "Liara?" he called, his voice hoarse. No answer, only the echo of thunder. He stumbled forward to where the core had been. Now it was shattered, fragments of glowing crystal floating in the air like stars frozen in time. In the center, faint energy ripples shimmered, and through them, for a brief second, he saw her. Liara, standing in light, her expression calm, her hand raised as if in farewell. Then the vision faded. Eli sank to his knees, grief pressing on his chest. He touched his wrist. The bond mark was still there, but now it was cold, a pale scar instead of a glow. "She's gone," he whispered. Outside, the storm began to change color. The violent blue turned soft silver, swirling into a calm pattern that illuminated the entire sky. The energy had stabilized. The moon was alive. She had done it. He stayed there for hours, staring at the core fragments. The silence was unbearable. Every sound reminded him of her voice, every flicker of light of her eyes. Then from somewhere deep in the tunnels came footsteps, mechanical, steady. He turned sharply. Vareen soldiers appeared at the far end, led by a familiar figure, the High Priest. His robes were torn, his expression grim but defiant. "You survived," the priest said coldly. Eli stood, eyes burning with anger. "You killed her." She fulfilled her duty, the priest said without emotion. And in doing so, she restored our world. Her sacrifice will be remembered for generations. Eli stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. Don't talk about her like that. You didn't deserve her loyalty. The priest raised his hand and the guards aimed their weapons. The bond has ended. You have no place among us, human. Leave before I end you. Eli clenched his fists. His wrist mark pulsed faintly once. A soft whisper brushed his mind, not words, just warmth. Liara. A flicker of strength surged through him. He met the priest's gaze. No, she gave her life for peace. I'm going to make sure her sacrifice means something. You won't twist it into your control. The high priest hesitated. You think you can stop us? Eli smiled faintly, tired but defiant. I don't think. I know. Before the guards could react, Eli grabbed a shard of the core crystal and slammed it into the ground. A blinding pulse of white energy burst out, knocking everyone off their feet. When the light cleared, he was gone, vanished into the storm. And high above, through the calm clouds of the reborn moon, a faint voice whispered on the wind. The bond never dies. The storm had quieted to a silver whisper, soft waves of light rolling across the alien sky. For the first time in days, there was peace over the Vareen moon. Eli stood at the edge of a broken ridge, his uniform torn, his face marked with dust and dried blood. Below him stretched the remains of the temple, shattered spires and smoking ruins glimmering faintly under the reborn light. He stared at the sky, lost in thought. The bond mark on his wrist was still there, pale and cold, but every now and then it gave a faint pulse, like a memory that refused to die. He whispered quietly, You kept your promise, Liara. A soft breeze brushed against him. For a second he thought he heard her voice in it, not words, just warmth. Behind him, footsteps approached. He turned. It was Mason, his old friend, the one who had laughed when Eli got the invitation weeks ago. The human fleet had finally returned after the storm had cleared. Damn, Eli, Mason said, eyes wide as he looked around. This place. What happened? Eli's gaze stayed on the horizon. Everything, he said quietly. And nothing you'd believe. Mason walked up beside him, scanning the wreckage. The command said the Vareen world stabilized just hours ago. Their energy fields went back to normal. You did this? Eli shook his head. Not me, her, Mason frowned. The Vareen woman? Eli nodded. Liara, she saved us all. Mason looked around again, the silence heavy between them. So, what now? Command wants to debrief you. They said you might have made contact with something the Alliance doesn't understand. Eli smiled faintly. They're right about that. He turned and started walking down the rocky path toward the ruins. Mason followed, curious but silent. The wind carried the faint hum of power through the air, like a distant heartbeat. When they reached the temple remains, Eli stopped at the center, where the core had once floated. Now only fragments of glowing crystal remained. He knelt and picked one up. It was cool to the touch, yet it hummed softly, like it remembered. Mason crouched beside him. You keeping that? Eli nodded slowly. It's not just a rock. It's her energy. Her choice. He stood again, staring at the horizon where twin suns were beginning to rise. She gave her life so that both our worlds could live. But I don't think she's gone. Mason raised a brow. You mean that in a poetic way or a literal way? Eli looked at his wrist. The mark pulsed once, faint but real. Both. For a long moment they stood in silence, watching the light wash over the land. Then, from the distant ruins came movement, faint figures appearing through the haze. Vareen survivors, some limping, some carrying others. At their lead walked the high priest. His robe was torn, his staff cracked, but his eyes burned with a strange mix of sorrow and respect. He approached slowly, stopping a few meters away from Eli. Human, he said, his voice lower now, humbled. The core lives because of your bondmate's sacrifice. I was blind, but she saw what I could not. Eli said nothing, his eyes cold but calm. The priest bowed, something no Vareen had ever done to a human before. Our people owe you both a debt beyond words. The High Council is gone. A new era begins, one guided not by control, but by unity. Eli studied him for a moment, then finally said, Then honor her memory. Make sure her sacrifice wasn't wasted. The priest nodded. It will be done. He turned to leave, his followers gathering behind him, their heads bowed in silent respect. When they were gone, Mason let out a slow whistle. Didn't think I'd see the day aliens bowed to us. Eli smiled faintly. They didn't bow to us. They bowed to her. Mason looked at the glowing crystal in Eli's hand. So what are you going to do now? Eli stared at the sky again, watching the stars fade behind the suns. There's a colony ship heading to the new frontier worlds. Maybe I'll go there. Build something new. Something worth the cost, Mason grinned. You always did like impossible jobs. As Mason walked back toward the landing craft, Eli stayed behind for a moment longer. The wind blew softly, carrying with it a faint, melodic whisper. He looked down at the crystal, and for a heartbeat he saw her reflection. Liara's golden eyes, warm and alive. Then the light faded. Eli closed his hand around the shard and whispered, "Wherever you are." We did it. He turned and walked toward the waiting shuttle, the wind rising behind him like a sigh from the stars. And as the ship lifted off, the camera of fate panned across the silver horizon, showing faint blue lights beginning to bloom in the sand, spreading outward in intricate patterns. Alive and growing. The bond had changed form. Liara wasn't gone. She had become part of the world she saved, and part of the human who loved her. And somewhere in the depths of space, two hearts, one human, one Vareen, still beat in silent harmony, forever bound beyond life, beyond time, and beyond the stars.